Hello, I am so glad to be back with you. We are starting day 2 of the Love Dare, and this day is really important to me, and it's very vulnerable for me to discuss this, especially for the world to see. But if you, a little backstory about me is if you talked to me a year ago or even 2 years ago, I was going through the biggest struggle of my life. So I suppressed all this anger from childhood trauma and things that had just happened in my life forever, for a very, very long time. And then I kept asking God to show me my heart. So what was happening is I'm saying these prayers and all this ugliness was pouring out of me. Just these emotions that I had not really faced for what they were ever in my life before. Like, only, I don't know, I just suppressed so much and buried so much, and just so much stuff was coming out, and it was not good. It was not good fruit. And my family, endured a lot of that, or saw a lot of this happening with me, and the grace that they showed me during that time, like as God was showing me my heart and all of this pain and all of this stuff that was coming out that was just foreign to me, that I had to face and deal with and get to a better place in life. And I wasn't like that before for a long time in my life, but that's because I didn't allow myself to be. And it wasn't that I allowed myself to be this time, it just, I was literally changing, but that stuff had to be released, and probably should have been done in a better way, I guess, but there was a lot of shame for me there. So of course, it should have been done in a better way, not where my family saw that, where my husband saw that, or Jack saw that. Ollie has never really seen that person. Maybe a little tiny bit, but just this person who was struggling and hurting and getting angry and lashing out and just not in a good place, right? So this chapter just speaks so much to me because I've literally lived this way for the first few years of my healing journey, where I just was a deeply broken hot mess. Like, it just, and in a lot of ways I was whole also, and I just really was trusting in God with all of the hurt and the anger and everything. And I'm like, okay, you're showing me my heart, and I have journals about it, and I didn't use it as an excuse at all. I was like, please, is this done? I mean, some days I was like, is this done? Like, I don't want to be this person. What is happening? And there was a really cool time where one person prayed for me, and this amazing person who has such a great gift of discernment prayed for me on 3 separate occasions. I asked her to since we moved here too. And came back and said things to me that she would have never known, and where it just applied so much to my life. Like, God's never going to isolate you ever again. And I was isolated for a year, the first year of my healing journey. It was like me, school, family, God. That was it. Church was inconsistent even at that time. So, well, it was mostly consistent, but there was a time where we just didn't go much because of school, and it was like a really wacky, crazy semester for me. But I was really isolated, and then she had said other things, and then another time I had asked her, and the things that she had said, I was like, I literally have been praying about these things, and I didn't tell her that. Like, I just asked her for prayer via email. We weren't even, or maybe it was a text, but and then she emailed me back. But so it wasn't like she even knew these things were going on in my life. And she came back and she said, these things to me that I had been praying over. And every time I talk to her, I'm like, I just feel like God gives me a big hug. So and says, like, I'm taking care of you, everything is going to be okay. So this day is really, really special to me. When I read this chapter, I mean, I have so many things highlighted. I have so many things, like when I did this study, I will tell you, do your children see you as an angry, frustrated parent? And I wrote yes, and it breaks my heart. So, and it did. And there was nothing, I felt like I had no control over it. And I was really, really scared. And I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And then God brought me to this friend. And now I feel like I have to finish the story, right? So God brought me to this friend. And I thought I was going to learn how to be an armored up prayer warrior. That's what I just kept feeling put on my heart. And so I messaged her one day, no joke, and said, hey, like, I feel like God's asking me to be an armored up prayer warrior. And for some reason, like, I feel very strongly that I'm supposed to reach out to you. So, and she did run the prayer team at our church. So she's like, funny, God's been asking me to mentor people. So we were like, perfect. And we met. And that first time we met, it was just amazing because I really thought we were going to like really dig deep into like strategic prayer or something. I wasn't really knowing what to expect, but I mean, that was the purpose of us meeting, is to pray, you know? So, she told me this story about her life, and I started crying, and she was like, oh my goodness, I didn't mean to make you cry. And I said, no, you don't understand, like, this is my life. Her saying that she like had fits of anger and sometimes rage, I just was so upset. Like, I was so hurt. There was like, I feel like those are the screams and the cries of a deeply wounded and hurt person. And it almost makes me cry right now because it's just so sad that we keep all of that inside of us, and that our children or our spouses or, you know, generations past tell us that that's what we have to do. But that's literally what pours out of you when you do that. And if you just talk through it, if you bring light to it, if you admit it, if we can humble ourselves and hit our knees and say, listen, these are things in my life that I'm struggling with. These are the feelings that it's making me feel. We have to acknowledge how we're feeling about things. We can't stuff it because it creates these roots. There was so much stuff in there. Like, it turns so ugly when it just sits there and festers for your whole entire life. And I can say that I walk now with such a weight that has been lifted off of me, that I don't feel that way anymore. Like, I can feel myself getting like irritated, but it doesn't go to another level, and I am gaining control over it again in my life, but not by suppressing it, you know, not by suppressing emotions. I'm able to say, this is how I'm feeling in this moment right now, and this is the boundary that I'm creating, which I think is pretty healthy when you get to that place where you're able to do that. So, and I just, like, that was the first time I talked through it. So that was pretty cool because I realized that I've really come a long way with healing and releasing of trauma and working through that. And I'm still working with a counselor now through just some stuff that I feel like I don't know, but this is also healing for me, being able to talk about it, being able to teach, being able to help other people. So this might be the rest of my healing journey, right? Is being able to help others, bringing purpose for your pain, like I learned in the Trauma for Wisdom the other day. And what I say all the time is my pain literally has been used for purpose, and that is beautiful, and that's okay. So getting into the Love Dare, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that, just the story with why this day is so very important to me, because it's kind of sad when you think about being this parent that's in this chapter that is not kind to their children, you know, is just angry and irritable and grumpy all the time. And, you know, that's not healthy for our kids. So we are going to get started. So on my board, I found my remote, which I knew where it was, but I lost my marker. So this is a little lighter. I'm not even sure if we can see it very well. But this is day 2, and again, love is patient, like we have been learning about and talking about. So, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Ephesians 6:4. When you truly love someone, 2 key attributes will show up on a regular basis: patience and kindness. In fact, many other characteristics of love are based upon these 2 attributes. Patience is how love diffuses something negative. Kindness is how love initiates something positive. One takes in a deep breath and the other breathes out life. So when we truly love someone, 2 attributes will come up on a daily basis: patience and kindness. That's point 1. And then patience, it's how love diffuses something negative, okay? And kindness is how love initiates something positive, all right? And then one takes in a deep breath, the other breathes out life. And that is all of the points on here today. And then I wanted to share my story with you and read more out of the book. But those points are so powerful on their own, just the 2 attributes of truly loving somebody, and then, you know, how they work and what they do, what's the result, right? So really good stuff, guys. I hope you write that down. So I will read it again. Patience is how love diffuses something negative. Kindness is how love initiates something positive. One takes in a deep breath, the other breathes out life. As you know, raising a child requires an unlimited supply of both, but today we will focus on the first of these 2 essentials: patience. Patience is when love chooses to suffer long for the greater good of another. It is like an experienced farmer who knows that fruitful fields only come if he's willing to endure the heat of the sun. Patience is like a wise builder who spends long hours slaving over blueprints, negotiating contracts, and overseeing supplies, so his desired vision can become a reality. Both the farmer and the builder must persist when they want to resist. They must daily keep investing time and hard effort until they can celebrate the great harvest or the open house. Likewise, being a loving parent requires a long supply of this amazing attribute. You are cultivating and building up your children, and all your work and sacrifice will ultimately pay off. But today requires your enduring patience. It is something we all need, but rarely delight in demonstrating. That's so true. We're not good at patience, especially in the culture that we live in right now. Yet, love invites us to exercise it frequently as parents. And I always say that patience is a muscle. So yeah, we have to exercise it. We have to keep practicing it and practicing it. Exercising it. And when we do exercise it frequently as parents, it brings maturity both to us and to our children, as well as needed grace and peace in the midst of our problems. So children have an amazing ability to test the level of their parents' patience, right? And they do this by their tone of voice, their disobedience, their irresponsibility, any lack of respect. Sometimes parents can feel so angry they say or do things in the heat of emotion that damage young hearts and minds. The impact can leave a deep and lasting emotional scar for many years to come. And I want to tell you that that was something that happened in my life. And that is where a lot of my deep emotional scars come from, and traumas is words that were spoken to me. And it's something that I've had to realize and face and say, like, this was the biggest thing. It was the language, it was the tone, it was the lack of feeling loved at times, and unaccepted, and just not worthy. And it wasn't a good feeling to feel that as a kid. I don't want my kids to feel like that. So I fight for them not to, So this is why we find God's patience so exemplary. When Moses was on the mountaintop, he discovered why God kept putting up with his rebellious, complaining children. God was compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in loving kindness. Exodus 34:6. He let his overflowing love control his anger. Whenever he did choose to be angry and firm, it was only after multiple extended demonstrations of his compassion and patience. Today, God is still gracious and patient with us as his children. So when we are unlovable and selfish, distracted and disobedient, we need to remember his enduring love for us and let his example of love overflow onto us and our children. We must refuse to spring off the handle in front of our offspring. When they see us controlling our anger, it is then that it teaches them to control theirs. If you're doing that, they're going to do that. And there was a time in my life that I did do that in front of my kid, and my kid does it, and he has special needs also, but he's reacting to how I reacted. I mean, his dad has done that in front of him too, not like I have, if I'm being honest. It's hard to admit that, but and sometimes we would get in fights and they would take place in front of him, and we've grown so much from that. But there was a time in his life, even though he was really, really small, he was exposed to that. So he does that, and his brain emotionally is not where it should be because of ADHD and some other things too that he just really struggles with. So that's not necessarily in result of mine and his dad's anger. It's like the ADHD and stuff is associated with some of that too, is what I'm saying. But it's definitely some behavioral characteristics there, but it's definitely a learned behavior as well. It's also genetic, but it has a lot to do with environment. It has more to do with environment often than genetic. So, all right, so today, God is still gracious and patient with us as his children. So when we are unlovable and selfish, distracted and disobedient, we need to remember his enduring love for us and let his example of love overflow onto us and our children. I read that before, sorry. We must refuse to spring off the handle in front of our offspring. When they see us controlling our anger, it teaches them to control theirs. The scripture says, be angry and yet do not sin. Ephesians 4:26. Sometimes anger is appropriate, but we should never let it get out of bounds. That means we have the anger under control and not allowing the anger to control us. When I was going through that healing, in the beginning stages of that, the anger, I mean, it didn't control me where somebody was going to get hurt, I don't think, but it was it controlled me. It controlled me. I couldn't break free of it. I didn't understand it. I just was this is not something I want to deal with ever. And now I can get angry and be healthy about it, So discipline and correction must be wisely rationed, but only after we've demonstrated loving patience. So do your children see you as an angry, frustrated parent? We need to ask ourselves that honestly, and then face whatever answer we come up with. Or would they describe you as compassionate and patient instead? Love chooses restraint. It controls your emotions rather than letting them control you. It challenges you to develop a long fuse instead of igniting a short temper. If you unnecessarily blow your top, it reminds you to humble yourself and quickly apologize, knowing what is at stake. And if you don't know, it's the relationship that you have with your child or your person, or any person for that matter. Wrath, on the other hand, is cruel. Proverbs 27:4. It divides and isolates. It weakens us and wounds others. It causes us to behave in foolish, regrettable ways. It almost never makes things better. and usually generates additional problems. If you struggle with anger, ask yourself why. Are your expectations realistic? Are you angry with somebody else yet taking it out on your kids? That was the problem. I was healing from this hurt and this anger that I had felt for so long that I just suppressed and harbored for many, many years. And it was just being taken out on other people and just anybody, like, well, my family, really. You may harbor painful memories of a parent's harsh anger toward you when you were young. But this pain does not need to be passed on to your children. And I have that underlined, and I was still struggling very much with losing my temper when I did this study, and I was broken, especially reading this. It was a big reality check for me, even though I knew that God was teaching me something and that He was going to carry me through it. Some days I didn't feel like that. It exhausted me. It was a tough time. Sometimes anger is rooted in our own sin or hypocrisy. We often get the most angry when our kids, in the same areas where we ourselves are weak. But overreacting to wrongful actions and attitudes that are familiar to us doesn't do anything to fix us, and it only frustrates them. That's where a humble confession may yield more effective instruction than the firm anger of your correction. And that's what I want. I want you to tell the truth more than I want you being an honest person and giving me a confession and us talking through that is more important to me than you, my children, being punished. I want to talk through why you made that decision. I want you to own up to it and be honest, and I want to talk through why you made that decision. I want to ask curiosity questions. I want to know what led you to make that decision so I can help you see, so I can just ask you questions so you can help your own self see that you don't want to do that again, or why it's not a good decision. And those are called curiosity questions, and they're amazing. So let's see where we are. When they know you love them and can admit your own humility, your counsel and training carry much more meaning. Patience is always welcome. It gives people more time to work through their issues. Do you hear that? It gives people more time to work through their issues. That's a tough one. It beautifully diffuses conflict before trouble has a chance to escalate. That's also a tough one sometimes. It whispers peace into situations brewing toward eruption. It's not a blanket form of tolerance that lets everything go, but rather a wise surveyor of the situation, allowing proper steps to be taken. Parenting does call for action against carelessness and defiance. But we must differentiate between true rebellion and what might be childish ignorance. Our kids don't think like us. Why do we expect them to act like us? We must factor in circumstances, their age, and their level of maturity. So instead of rising up and tearing down, let love calm you down. I should have wrote that at the bottom. I forgot about that part. Then you can build them up. The more patient you are today, the more victories you can celebrate tomorrow. So instead of rising up and tearing down, let love calm you down. Okay? So I already spoke a lot. This speaks for itself. It's so powerful. I told you my deepest, darkest secret. So today, I'm just going to jump into the dare, and then we are going to be done. So write the words, love is patient, on a piece of paper and temporarily tape it to your mirror or refrigerator. When you see it over the next few weeks, purpose to display patience throughout the day as a further demonstration of love to your children. And I can see that through this time, since I was just reading the very first paragraph that I wrote, that I really needed to work on patience, I have become more patient. So that is a good thing to learn as I am doing this study. I thank you for tuning in today to my channel. Please subscribe to my channel, like it, and share me with your friends, especially if you think somebody could benefit from to this day's study or this study in general. It's so awesome. If you haven't gotten your books yet, make sure you get your books so you can write in them and look back to and see the growth journey that God has you on and that you are working hard for. So you can also get them on audio. Lifeway.com sells it, and Amazon. You can probably go get them at a bookstore as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Take care, and God bless.